Good morning. Happy Tuesday. Peace to you and grace as well. We thank you for I thank you for joining and for watching. I'm always encouraged to see that there are people viewing either live or later on YouTube, and so I'm really thankful for the support that way. And my goal is that at some point this live version has more people watching together and we could comment and share. And so maybe we'll have to switch up the timing on that, maybe like once a week, do something later in the evening so people can be home, and then we can have it live. But for now, I just want to build an audience, and so I'm thankful that you're there watching. I just want to quickly say before we get started, you can go to filethoughts.com. I'm also posting the videos there on a regular basis, on a daily basis. I'll post the content there under the mental health and scriptures uh, tab, and then you'll see, or page, and then you'll see there's also an archive of all the past uh, episodes or studies are also there. And you can just click, and click on that, and you see them in order. And I'm organizing them by dates or time frames that I've been recording. So you can see that. Check that out on thoughts.com. You can share that with your friends, family, coworkers, anyone you think who is interested in taking a look at scriptures in a more honest and real way. That's my goal. I want to look at the scriptures in an honest and real way. I want to see what the scriptures have to say. I want to study them and not talk about my opinions or ideas from out there in the world. I just was uh, thinking about why I'm doing this recently, because I want to try to do like an ad campaign trying to get the word out. And it really did start with me complaining about the message I was hearing at church on a Sunday. I was just like, man, why don't people study the scriptures? Why don't people take the time to study it and then teach it, rather than read a couple verses here and there and then just talk about social issues or whatever interests them, politics or whatever. And it's just like, since what that I remember growing up, that used to be an odd thing. Someone would do that, and everyone would be like, "What are you doing?" And the person may even get reprimanded or rebuked and told, "Hey, you need to stick to studying the scriptures." Now it seems like it's the opposite. It's here are all my talking points, and here are you can let me read this, let me read that to support my ideas. And it's not everybody, but that's why this started. That's why I was like, and so I was complaining about that, and a family member said, "Well, what are you going to do about it?" And I was like, "I don't know." And he just encouraged me to put myself out there more. So that's what I'm doing, just putting myself out there more, and also just wanting to reach out to those of you who are more interested in studying the scriptures rather than hearing people share their opinions on, again, social political issues and read a couple verses here and there. So anyway, so we're in John chapter 11, verse starting in verse 17. If you're interested more in the sign here that is represented, this is sign number 7, the resurrection of Lazarus. I did a previous stream on that when I covered all 7 signs. Again, you can go to filethoughts.com, click on mental health and scriptures, and you'll see an archive there. And that was on the 7 signs. And so I talked more about the actual sign of resurrection in that recording. But for this one, we're going to focus on the statement, "I am the resurrection and the life." So look at John chapter 11. For a little bit of context, we'll start at verse 17. So when Yeshua arrived, he discovered that Lazarus had been in the tomb already for 4 days. Bethany was less than 2 miles from Jerusalem, and many of the Judeans had come to Martha and Miriam to console them about their brother. Uh, Give me a second. I had the wrong thing there to scroll. Okay. When Martha heard that Yeshua was coming, she went out to meet him, but Miriam sat in the house. Martha said to Yeshua, "Master, if you had been here, my brother wouldn't have died. But I know even now that whatever you may ask of God, he will give you." Yeshua said to her, "Your brother will rise again." And Martha said to him, "I know I know he will rise again in the resurrection on the last day. Yeshua said to her, I am the resurrection and the life. Whoever believes in me, even if he dies, shall live, and whoever lives and believes in me shall never die. Do you believe this? She says to him, Yes, Lord, I believe that you are Messiah, Ben Elohim, who has come into the world. So we'll stop there for a little bit of understanding background in case you uh, haven't heard the seven sign or seen the seven signs session regarding this miracle of Jesus raising Lazarus from the dead. Uh, Earlier in the chapter, we're told that a messenger was sent to Jesus to tell him that Lazarus was sick, and that's why Martha says here, like if you had been here, he would have he would have lived. What's interesting is looking at that study that it by doing the looking at the time frame and how long it takes to travel from Bethany, where they were, Bethany in Judea, to Bethany beyond the Jordan, is believed where Jesus was seated or was at with his disciples. It would have taken a day to get there, and just like in the timing of everything that was going on, it was most likely that by the time the messenger got to uh, got to where Jesus was, that Lazarus had died at that point, right? So, uh, and when Jesus had decided to leave, he waited a couple extra days and he left. And what Eli Lazorkin Eisenberg says in his commentary was, this is significant because according to Jewish culture and tradition in those times specifically, the belief was that the spirit of a dead person would still kind of hover around the body for 3 days, depending on, how they died. We see with Jesus, like when he died on the cross, there was no belief that his body was going or his spirit was going to remain because of the type of death he had. But when it especially came to illnesses like this, that it was possible for someone to stay alive or not stay alive, but still maybe wake up from being dead, right? Just and there are other cultures who do that. I mentioned this in the last in that other session, like the Irish people having wakes, and just like an idea overall in a lot of cultures across the world that, what, someone can look dead, but it's possible that whatever illness took over, whatever happened, that they actually recover. So it's kind of like they're in a coma and they'll wake up. And for the miracle of resurrection to happen, it was strongly believed that, if you just kind of made this request happen within that time frame, is more likely to happen because the spirit is still there. Maybe the person really just needed healing, whatever. And so, Jesus, come quickly, my brother's about to die. If you can get here before the 3 days are up, then maybe he can survive, right? Which is why, according to Eisenberg, when you see in verse 24, sorry, not in verse 24, in verse 21, if he had been here, my brother wouldn't have died. But I know even now, whatever you may ask God of, he will give you. And Martha said, verse 24, I know he will rise again in the resurrection in the last day. And so the idea is that uh, she had a belief that if he had been there, Jesus could have brought him back. But now that it's been past that time frame, it's been more than 3 days. That now the resurrection that she can hope for is the resurrection of the last day. Now, for that, I do want to look at Daniel chapter 12. Daniel chapter 12, and I had these all set up, and excuse me. Oh, here it goes. This is Daniel chapter 12. Daniel chapter 12, verse 1. It says, At that time, Michael, the great prince who stands guard over the sons of your people, will arise, and there will be a time of distress such as never occurred since the beginning of the nation until then. But at that time, your people, everyone who is found written in the book, will be delivered. Multitudes who sleep in the dust of the earth will awake, some to everlasting life, and others to shame and everlasting contempt. Those who are wise will shine like the brightness of the heavenly expanse, and those who turn many to righteousness will be like the stars forever and ever. And so this passage is what what Martha is referring to in our passage in John chapter 11, where she says, "I know he will rise again in the resurrection on the last day." And so she's resigned to the fact now that the time frame for him to come back to life or to recover from this illness has passed, right? And that's again according to Eisenberg and understanding the context of the historical context there, and we look at other resurrections that happened, they all happened within that time frame. No one else was raised after that time frame had passed. So Lazarus's resurrection here is a significant one because of that fact. And so that passage there in Daniel is why Martha has some hope. She goes, there's a last day, and you can see the time of distress and everything, and it's like language reminiscent of the book of Revelation. It's the book and the and a time when the books will be open, the book of life will be open, and those who are in there will be called forth, and their life and everything else. So that's the reference there. What's interesting about that is just for Jesus's audience, we've talked about how he's talking to Samaritan Jews and Galilean Jews and people outside of Judea. And one of the things that mark differences between the different systems, or there's just different groups, I should say, was their belief in resurrection. And we know from other gospels, like in Matthew, that specifically the Sadducees did not believe in resurrection. It stated about them that fact that they didn't believe in resurrection. And one of the reasons why, or one of the reason why they didn't believe in resurrection is because they only believed in the first 5 books of Moses as being scripture. Okay? And so you could show them the book of Daniel. You can say, "Hey, look at Daniel chapter 1, and see there's resurrection here," and they would tell you, "No, but that's fine, but that's not scripture." Okay, very specific, strict sense of what scripture is. And there was some crossover when it came to different groups. But when you had the Sadducees there, that's something that they believed, them and their followers believed in. So that was one section of Jewish followers of the Torah. Now the Pharisees, they believed in resurrection, right? And they believed in resurrection because they believed in more than just the first 5 books of the Bible being scripture. And the Samaritan Jews especially looked at scripture with a more open face because uh, of the stories in like First Kings and First Chronicles, the differences there. And I've talked about this stuff before. And so it's interesting. We can see like the sense of her belief here, in the sense that she believes that Daniel was part of the scriptures, and she believed in resurrection. She did. But Jesus' response to her is one that breaks one free from whatever their belief systems might be. Okay, so you have, she believed, and this is according to Eisenberg, in his commentary, there was a strong belief that resurrection could happen within the first couple of days if someone dies because the spirit is there, and so this kind of belief was there, and they've seen Jesus raise people from the dead already. There was a little girl who had died and was sick, and Jesus said, she's not dead, she's sleeping, and all that. That was really close to the time. It was like just a couple few hours after she died. There was the man who was the son of the woman, the widow that Jesus raised, and they had just been carrying his body out, so he was within the time frame. So they believe like within that, and then the stories with Elijah and Elisha, and when those boys died and when they were raised from the dead, and so all of that in her mind kind of created this box, right? That okay, you didn't come in this time frame. If you had been here early enough, he would be alive. He says to her, he will live again, and then the box transfers to the next category, and it's okay. Yeah, I know he'll resurrect on the last day, and so now Jesus is going to break open both of those boxes of beliefs and say, no, listen, I can do something now. Even it's not too late, and it's not too early. I can raise and bring back people from the dead whenever I want. And so Yeshua said to her, I am the resurrection and the life. Whoever believes in me, even if he dies, shall live. And whoever lives and believes in me shall never die. Do you believe this? And her response, very simple, yes, Lord, I believe that you are the Messiah, Ben Elohim, which means the Son of God. Uh, and I want to look at that phrase. Obviously, that's what we're doing this morning. I am the resurrection and the life. As I was looking at the exegesis of all this stuff, and it's just a fancy way to say, like, what did the original language say? And resurrection simply just means bringing back to life something that was dead. So it's a very straightforward definition. What's interesting here is that Bruce Metzger wrote a textual commentary, which is very well known, and then you have the Lexham textual notes, and both of those make mention of the fact that there are some manuscripts out there that did not have the word life in this phrase. I am and so in other words, it could be translated, "I am the resurrection." Okay, but as Metzger and others note, there are enough manuscripts out there that have the word life that they feel very comfortable leaving the word life in there. It's not like the story of adultery we talked about earlier, the story of the woman who's caught in adultery. There's like so many that don't have that story. So more like it shows that maybe that story was an original. And that's why your Bibles will put brackets around it and say, hey, this may not be from the original manuscript. But here you're not going to have notes like that because there are so many, they call them witnesses, that have this phrase in there. Anyway, just found that interesting. But looking at that phrase, I am the resurrection and the life, made me think about other times that Jesus spoke in this sense. And so what I wanted to look at was that's the Daniel passage. I want to look at a couple passages in Revelation. So in Revelation, something that kind of echoes like the same sentiment. In Revelation verse 1, chapter 1, verse 8 says, I am the Alpha and Omega, says Adonai Elohim, who is and who was and who is to come, the Almighty. The idea here is that he's the beginning and the end, right? Alpha and Omega, the first and last of the alphabet. And just the idea that I am the resurrection and the life kind of imitates that idea, because resurrection is speaking about the end of life, the very end of everything. That you're dead. That's it. It's the over. It's everything's over. And so what he's claiming there is very similar to this. I am the one who's eternal. I'm the one from the beginning. I'm the one from the end. Right. And later in Revelation chapter 1 verse 17, uh, John is writing and he says, when I saw him, I fell at his feet like a dead man, but he placed his right hand on me, saying, do not be afraid. I am the first and the last, and the one who lives. I was dead, but look, I am alive forever and ever. Again, these are just some passages that came to mind when I saw that phrase, I am the resurrection and the life. And then ultimately, this passage was read on Sunday, and it's one of my favorite passages. I have this Bible that I'm keeping notes in. I intend to pass on to my daughter whenever I'm done writing my notes in it. And uh, and so I wrote as a side note in here. It's like this is my one of my favorite passages in the Bible. It's from Colossians chapter 1, starting at verse 15. Because he is the image of the invisible God, the firstborn of all creation. For by him all things were created, in him and on earth, the seen and the unseen, whether thrones or angelic powers or rulers or authorities, all was created through him and for him. He exists before everything, and in him all holds together. He is the head of the body, his community. He is the beginning, the firstborn from the dead, so that he might come to have first place in all things. For God was pleased to have all his fullness dwell in him, and through him to reconcile all things to himself, making peace through the blood of his cross, whether things on earth or things in heaven. And the the idea that's coming to mind when seeing Jesus say, I am the resurrection and the life, I think is perfectly encapsulated in that passage there in First Corinthians. What Jesus is telling her is that there are boxes that you might live in, right? That have to raise the dead, have to be here within the first 3 days to raise the person from the dead, right? Otherwise, it's too late. And so now you just have to wait till the last day when we're all raised from the dead. Daniel chapter 12. He's like, no, listen, I'm the resurrection of life. Like what that means is all authority, all power, everything that exists is under my authority. Okay, so let's say it's true that you have to do this within the first 3 days for a regular person or prophet. Okay, like Elijah or Elisha. Like if someone dies, you have to be there and you have to be begging. I forget which one. Maybe it was both of them had to lay on top of the kid's body and spread themselves out, and they're praying and praying and praying. Kind of an odd story image, like you're laying on top of a dead person, and it's just maybe for them there's a box that you have to fit into in order to have this power, in order to have these miracles happen. But for me, I'm the one who designed all things. So if there is a box, I'm the one who made it. And if I decide to walk or work outside of that box, I'm going to do that because all things are created by me. All things are made for me. Everything was made through me. I'm the resurrection of life. I'm the beginning and I'm the end. And what I love how he clarifies and says, like, whoever believes in me, even if he dies, shall live. And I think he's telling her, he's going to ask her, like, do you believe in this? Because yes, I believe in this. But it's clear he's also making a statement about Lazarus. Lazarus was someone who believed in him and he died and he's going to live. And again, he's busting open this box. It's like not when what Daniel was talking about, not in that time frame. I'm going to show you how he's going to live right now. He's going to live again right now. And I love in verse 26, he says, whoever lives and believes in me shall never die. When I turned 30, so 10 years ago, I remember my cousin and I, we're like, he always says, we've known each other from the crib. He was like, I think he's 6 months older than me. And my mom used to babysit because she didn't work, and so like if, my aunt was a nurse and she just would babysit, right? It's like the easiest thing. I think we also lived in the same apartment complex. I actually have like a really early memory of us hanging out together in a playpen, right? I'm gonna share the whole memory because it's not like a great memory, but we've been together for a long time, our whole lives. And I remember we were walking to this place we were going to hang out for my birthday, and he's like, "Man, Reggie, can you believe we're 30?" He'd already been 30 for 6 months, and I just turned 30 then, and I'm like, "Yeah, I mean, not a big deal, man. We're gonna live forever." And I remember he kind of chuckled, and I'm serious. I just turned 40, and another cousin, same kind of thing. I'm a little older than her, a couple months. She asked me the same thing at my daughter's birthday party in January. She's like, "Man, we're gonna be 40 this year." And I'm like, "Yeah," but I take this verse right here. It's like, "And whoever lives and believes in me shall never die." And Jesus being straightforward, like the scriptures here are clear. This is truth. Do you believe in it? And if you believe in it, how is it going to transform your life? And for Martha, it's going to lead to her seeing this awesome miracle of her brother being raised from the dead. For me, it's when I turn 40, I don't need to fret or frown or say, oh, half my life is over, or whatever it might be. Like, I can just be like, yeah, it's just a drop in the bucket because I believe I'm going to live forever. And that's why he says, I am the resurrection and the life. He wants us to know what level of power he has. He wants Martha to know that. What level of power. It's and why John wrote this. He wants his reader to understand the power that resides in this Yeshua. We looked at, I'm the bread of life, how he's like the manna from heaven, but even better, he's our sustenance. He's what we need to live daily. We need to eat from him. I am the light of the world, and reference back to Isaiah chapter 60 and how he is the one that's going to expose the darkness that exists in the world. He's going to expose sin and he's going to expose what's false and what's in error, and he's going to give us the truth, and he's going to expose light, and he is the light of the world. And so that's that. And we saw yesterday the gate and the good shepherd, how he is the only way into this relationship, into this flock. Like he's asking here with Martha, like, do you believe that, like I'm the son of God? I guess then that's the only way you're going to get into this flock and to be uh one of his sheep. And then he says, I'm the good shepherd. I'm the one that's going to lay down my life for you. I'm going to do everything it takes to protect you. You are mine, and you will hear my voice. And now, this I am is about the fifth one here. It's about his power and everything that he can do, and everything that he is. And I think this I am specifically really reminds me of what we see in Exodus chapter 3. And I've mentioned this a couple of times. And John is, I mean, it's very clear. It should be very clear to you, as it is to me, and that John is using the I am statements for the reader to understand that Jesus is God. And it's a reference back to Exodus chapter 3, verse 14. God answered Moses, I am who I am. And he said, you are to say to Bnei Israel, I am has sent me to you. Right? Bnei Israel just means the children of God. The children of Israel, I should say, the children of Israel. And so when John says, Jesus said, I am the bread of life. I am the light of the world. I am the gate. I am the good shepherd. I am the resurrection and the life. He's referring to this time when Moses was asking God, who do I say sent you? And one thing it should be noted, I've titled this the seven I ams or whatever, but really there are nine I ams. The first one is in John chapter 4, when he straight up tells the Samaritan woman, I am. He doesn't say, I am this, or he just says, I am. I am he, like, I am the Messiah. We're going to see him do that again later. And so it's not about the number seven, it's about the statement itself. I am. And again, this one here is about his power and everything he has power over. And that's why I wanted to read those other passages for you. That's from Colossians chapter 1 and Revelation chapter 1. And again, I wanted to look at this here, verse 16. For by him all things are created, and all was created through him. He exists before everything, and in him all holds together. And I just, like I said, I love that because it just accentuates and glorifies this person, this Yeshua, for us to help us to understand exactly the power that he has. And if you recall from yesterday in John chapter 10, he had been stating a number of times like that he's going to lay down his life and that he is going to take it up again, and that no one takes it from him, that he is the one that has the power. And so John is really building up to this point here. This miracle, this statement is the ultimate show of Jesus's power and authority. And that's why he makes it, and that's why he does what he does. All right, I am done there. A shorter study today with only one statement, but I think one that's helpful. And as far as mental health goes, and I'm sorry for sometimes forgetting to do this, but as far as mental health goes and integration, there's a lot of takeaways here. But I think the one that really speaks to me is, despite having all this power, despite having all this power, the emotion surrounding death does not escape John. It doesn't escape Jesus. It's so easy to think, well, I have the power. I can take care of this. Let's go heal Lazarus. Let's go raise him from the dead. There's no need to cry. No need to worry. No need to stress. No need to have pain. But that's not what we see happens here. He's got all this power. I mean, this statement is, I mean, John sees Jesus in Revelation and he's like, I'm the first and the last. And he's bowing at his feet. He's like, oh my gosh, like this guy is so powerful. And it's the same power. I mean, he's still there and he's so powerful. He's going to lay down his own life and take it up again. Like, that's how powerful he is. And yet, in verse 33, we see here that when he sees Mary weeping and when he sees the Judeans who are there weeping with her, it says he was deeply troubled in spirit and himself agitated. And then in verse 35, famously, Yeshua wept. Jesus wept. And what I want to say is, with that and with mental health and with grieving. And I had a session. We talked about loss and grief back in when we were doing emotionally healthy spirituality. All that is archived on I Am Barabbas uh, podcast on YouTube or on the website foulthoughts.com if you want to look at that, the loss and grief episode. But just with all that power, he still grieves. Why? Because death still hurts. It still causes pain. It still causes sorrow. Um, and illogically, people have used our faith to tell others that they shouldn't mourn or grieve. And they use what Paul says in First Thessalonians about that. And what Paul was saying is we shouldn't mourn like people who don't have hope. Okay. People who don't have hope or an expectation of what's going to happen in the future, they grieve in a more intense way, that's not a more intense way, in a different way that can be prolonged. And in grief, we have in psychology, we have this idea of unhealthy grieving, unresolved grieving, versus healthy grieving. And so, even in psychology and in secular science, we understand the difference between what is a healthy type of grieving and what is an unhealthy type of grieving. And people who are grieving in an unhealthy way uh, have a hard time adjusting to environments where people have died. They kind of keep rooms together. I'm talking about time frames, right? It's like a couple months, a year, 2 years. It makes sense. But if there's an inability to move on, and you're kind of stuck in the grief and stuck in the loss, it's considered unhealthy. There's depression there, and there's trauma, and there's a need to heal and to process that kind of stuff. But to not be allowed to grieve at all, just because we're Christians and we're supposed to know where everyone goes when they die, is not genuine to the feelings and emotions and experiences of grief. And that's why I love the balance in this passage, where you have Jesus talk to the two different sisters. And with Martha, she's like, "Oh, you could have done something," and he's like, "I listen. You're right. I could have done something, and I still can do something, and I will do something. Come, see what I'm going to do." Right? The balance of that, because I am the most powerful being you'll ever come across. I am the first and last. I am the resurrection to life. Like nothing is going to get past me. And then to see him interact with the second sister, who again is just weeping, like if you would have been here, my brother would have lived, and grieving, and he grieves with her. And so there's two sides to that. There's two sides to that. So yes, I'm the most powerful. Yes, we have the most powerful God. Yes, when someone dies, we can hope that and know that they will be raised again in the future. We can also feel the sadness of it. We can also feel the grief of it. We can also mourn it. And in that grief is real, and that grief deserves to be recognized. And if Jesus can express it, then we can express it too. And what's not needed always is like a reminder. That's depending on the person, right? Where Martha was, she was ready to hear this message from Jesus. Where Mary was, she needed someone to grieve with her. And then ultimately, his power is shown. So as far as mental health goes, I want to say it's good. It's fine to grieve. It's good to grieve. God Himself grieves. Uh, the difference in how we grieve is going to eventually be evident in how we move on and we process the losses that we have, because the hope that we have will give us a reason to grieve differently than those who don't have hope. And that's what Paul was trying to say in First Thessalonians. Okay. Thank you again for watching. We will tomorrow discuss I am the way, the truth, and the life. And then we will also look at the day after that, I am the true vine. Those are the technically last two of the seven I am statements by Jesus. And then, so that's Wednesday, Thursday. And then Friday, we can discuss uh, Shavuot, the festival of weeks, and what exactly that means for us as New Testament Gentile believers. All right, thank you again for watching, and God bless. And again, peace to you.